Hi out there in the big world. This is Frank Lutz, a couple of my buddies here at Beyond Baroque in Venice, California at 681 North Venice Boulevard, about halfway between Lincoln Boulevard and the beautiful Venice Beach. It's about 3 or 4 blocks from Lincoln Boulevard. And today we're doing the introductory issue of, the Beyond Baroque Podcast, the BBPP, the Beyond Baroque PP, podcast for poets, that is. Poets and performance artists and other folks like that who've been around here for many years, and some new ones too. For your information, Beyond Baroque was started in 1968. That's when my dear sweet wife, Linda Albertano, and I moved down to here to Venice. And she was prominent here. Sadly, she's no longer with us as of a couple of years ago. But she loved the place, and so do I. And so we've been going here for over 50 years. And I want to introduce to you the director and the soon-to-be director sitting here to my right. So the director, Mr. Quentin Ring, has been here as the director for over 6 years, and we've been Beyond Baroque for longer than that. And then he's soon moving up to the become on the board of directors, and replacing him will be Jimmy Vega, the famous Jimmy Vega, and he's been here for over 6 years as well. So the place is going to be in good hands. Both of these guys love poetry and they love poets. I'm going to be doing a Q&A with them and ask them a little bit about their background and how they got involved with poetry, and we'll go from there. So welcome everybody. And shall I start? You guys ready? You guys, did you memorize your answers already? Okay.
I think we're ready. Thanks for having us, Frank. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Excited.
It's always fun to be around these guys. They've got a good sense of humor. They're both very intelligent, well-educated, and they're great to be around. And that's what all the girls say, too. Oh, did I say that? Just for interest's sake for everybody, you guys are both poets, and I know you've recently been published again on Maintenant. Maintenant, it looks like maintenance, but it's the French word maintenant, means now. It comes out of New York. The wonderful Kat Georges and her wonderful husband, Peter Karlaftes, they've been publishing Maintenant, which is an annual catalog of great poets and great poetry, and they've been doing that for about 25 years, and my Linda has been prominent in there every year for all that time. So, so you're in there now. So what got either one of you or both of you interested in poetry? How old were you, and was it in school or at home or what? And what brought you to the point where you've been working with poets? Why did you decide you wanted to work in a place with poets? So either one of you, just go ahead. Talk loud so.
I'll start. I'll say for myself, I'm actually not a poet or much of a poet. I do write some poetry. I am a fiction writer. I do have an academic background in poetry. I love it. It's kind of my life working here at Beyond Baroque. However, I don't consider myself much of a poet, which is interesting because there's a long history of that here at Beyond Baroque of directors not being poets themselves. But my interest in poetry and in literature, I would say it was primarily just literature, more broadly speaking, novels, short stories, poems, as long as I can remember. You know, I probably first started reading seriously when I was, 8 or so, after just getting over sort of children's books, and poetry was always a part of that, and that I think especially sort of kicked off even furthermore in high school. I loved all my classes in literature, all poetry, and in college I was a literature major. I went on to graduate school at University of Chicago, and really studied very intensively poetry and poetics, and particularly did a lot of work on and around Emily Dickinson, thinking about her use of language and how it sort of came out of sort of a wider philological sort of culture in the 19th century America after the American Revolution. And so ended up at Beyond Baroque. I just got involved here, as a community member because I was writing and was interested in other writers, and over time just started working here and becoming immersed in the poetry community. So that's kind of my journey. I probably am writing more poetry now than I have in a while, just because I think I've been so immersed in it, but I'm still not serious. Yeah. Jimmy's the serious one.
Yeah. Well, Quentin's done a great job, and everybody speaks very highly of him, as they do Jimmy. And they're both people, and they like having folks around, and they like talking and mixing with people and making them comfortable. And this is a great place to come. It's a world famous poetry venue, Beyond Baroque. You can Google it online. It's www.beyondbaroque.org, and they've got a full menu there of up and coming poets who are going to be here, and performance artists, etc. And you'll see my Linda in there, Linda Albertano, great poet and performance artist. In fact, we have established a foundation in her name, the Linda J. Albertano Foundation or Annual Award for Women Poets is how it was identified. And we've already given away a couple of annual prizes to women. And in fact, I've written some books about Linda. One is called, I don't know if you can see this, Alex, or not, but On the Life of Linda J. Albertano, and 3 other books about her, and all of them great reads because she was a great person and very interesting. So getting on to Jimmy, let's see what your secret is, man. When did you start writing poetry and why, and now that you're a published author?
Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for having us, Frank.
Sure.
It's really nice to be the first to be a part of all of this here at Beyond Baroque, especially.
Speak up, by the way, and loud.
Sure. Yeah. I got into poetry actually through music. I was kind of getting into a variety of music at a young age, as young as I can remember, as early as I can remember. I was always attracted to musical instruments and to the idea of a performance or what a performance can be. And it wasn't until high school that I really started to broaden, not just through my fascination in the musical arts, but through the literary arts, and primarily through theater. So reading Shakespeare kind of got me into the world of poetry, and continued that trajectory. Early on, I was part of a community arts partnership program with CalArts, where I got a chance to study with Maggie Nelson in creative writing, and so Maggie was one of my first creative writing instructors, kind of right out of high school, and continued that journey for a long time in studying creative writing, in reading and writing. Continued those pursuits when I got to UCLA, and started to really start to dive into more research heavy focuses on literature, on poetry, and then continued that work when I got to my graduate program over at CalArts in creative writing, and then really looking again at performance as a whole, performance poetry or performance art, really anything that allowed me to create in the world of poetry, but also intermingle some of that with music, with performance, and so that's been my trajectory.
Yeah, that's great. So that's, for both of you, you've got a lot of education in literature and poetry as well. So it's wonderful. Yeah, the way I got involved in poetry. My dad and I were talking when I was about 11 years old, and I was sitting in the living room. My dad was in his easy chair, and we were just yakking about art, and I was sitting on the carpet, the floor beside him. And at one point he said to me, "Frankie, most people think that music is the most important art, but I don't. I think poetry is." I said, "Why is that, Dad?" And he said, because with poetry, what we're always doing is trying to expand the language, the use of words and new words, etc., and to help people express their emotions and their feelings and what they're thinking about. And he said, in fact, some poets actually invent words, like Shakespeare's invented, Dad said, about 1,500 words, and I think that's accurate during his career. So Shakespeare created words to fit the thing. And so when I went to university the first time, I was a scholarship kid for football at Ohio State University, and I was 17 years old when I showed up. I was the youngest guy, I think, on the team, but I was big, and and was doing pretty well to get a scholarship. But I got hurt, so I got redshirted for a year. So what happened was, I decided instead of hanging around the Midwest, Dad was always encouraging travel, because that's what he did too. He was an athlete, but he got injured too, and so he traveled. And so I took off, and I ended up working on an oceanographic vessel with the aim I was going to go to school in France. And I ended up going to Paris to school, the university. And then after that, I was so enthralled with the whole European scene, I went back to play ball one season. And I told Dad, I'm going back to Europe to school. And he said, really? And I said, yeah. Well, he was up to that because he was well educated himself. So he said, well, okay, you had a career in football, but go ahead and go for it. So I ended up going to school in Germany and Italy, but all the time I was writing poetry. And then I started traveling more around the world with the oceanographic institution I was with. And we ended up going to India and Africa and the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic and everywhere. I went to where Napoleon was exiled and died on St. Helena in the South Atlantic. It was amazing. Anyway, it was a great time. And so I started writing poetry all that time, and a lot of my poetry is about those places and about those voyages and experiences I had, especially in Italy. I loved Italy so much, and I would write late at night. Visions had come to me, and I'd write about old Italy. So anyway, so when I came out here and met, I was going to keep moving, but I met Linda and decided I'm going to stay here because I want to be near her. And that was in 1968. We met on a cloudy, rainy, cold winter night, February '68. She actually picked me up hitchhiking. You can imagine, she said, I'm the only man she ever picked up. She just felt sorry for me. And I was on Hollywood Boulevard can't remember the cross street. It was west of Cahuenga. In any event, and we started talking and etc. And we were together for the next 55 years. We're still together, and we still communicate. But I was writing poetry all the time, and of course, then when she got involved here, I wasn't so much a public poet or a performance artist, but she was, and I encouraged her, and she loved this place, and so that's our history with this. I've had some poems published. I'm going to be publishing some more, but I'm really more interested in writing than anything else. So that's it.
That's great.
So when you're here working with the other poets, just out of curiosity, what are some of the interesting things that happen when you're working with other poets, whether they're doing performance art or whatever? What kind of problems do they have, or things that they talk about, or poems that strike your imagination, your fancy? What is it that you guys respond to? Because you're at most, if not all, of the performances. And so what is it you look at, or what are you looking for? Who wants to go? Go ahead, whoever. So.
I think anytime with poetry, first and foremost, you're looking for an interesting use of language and something memorable. I think one of the things that's true for me, and I think for a lot of people who come to work in this space, is you come with a certain idea about what you like in poetry, or what your tastes are, what your preferences are. But I think working in a space like this, that really does try to cater to a lot of different poets, different communities. At least for me, I think I've just learned so much, and I think I've sort of broadened a lot working here over time. Absolutely. Because you have so many different people working in different traditions or with different interests or different aesthetic taste or cultural references or whatever, and just being able to sit and appreciate that and learn from it is, I think it's sort of core to what I respond to, at least. In every case there's going to be an interesting use of language, but sometimes it's going to be something completely unexpected to me, and that is something. I've seen a lot of poetry readings, and some of them are a little repetitive, but they're every week, every month, there's something that just sort of sticks out. Yeah. And so that's, and of course, beyond the poetry itself, there's dealing with artists, and that's generally a joy, but they're not the most, it's not like a pure business environment. I like to say, when I first took over at Beyond Baroque, I said I'm going to start every program on time, and that lasted about a week, because not just the audiences wouldn't be here on time, but the poets wouldn't be here on time, and so exactly. you adjust to what
of course
the community you're working with.
But the artists.
Yeah.
Right time.
Yeah, I think going back to our core, one of our core principles in our mission is to imagine the possibilities of language, and I think that's something I'm always thinking about when we open our doors to the Wanda Coleman Theater. Is just to kind of have an open mind and get the chance to learn something new that night, or hear an interesting use of phrase or use of language. I feel very grateful being in this space because it just feels like a continuous education. Week to week, we're learning new things. We're learning about new poets, and we're learning new lines, right? New lines, new phrases of language, and the ways that these various poets, artists, writers, the way that they share their emotions. Or the way that they show their craft in whatever they're presenting, I think is always really, really fascinating to me. I mean, it's something that I really enjoy, and it kind of, it's great to see the work here in the space on a Friday or on a Saturday when we're working behind the scenes earlier that week to kind of make it all happen and come alive in the theater. So yeah, I mean, I love working in the space, and I love working with poets and artists. I agree. I think they all come with a lot of creative ideas, and sometimes that creativity, you might run into certain, let's call it
issues,
creative issues, right? Or creative opportunities even. Yeah. But that's also, I think, a bit of a joy because it allows us to then tap into the creative side, not from like an eye or an artistic standpoint, but as an arts administrator, how can we be creative to handle any kind of issue, problem, suggestion, whatever comes to the space. So it's really quite fun, I think, to be here and to get a chance to work with everyone.
That's great. I as you were speaking, I was thinking about my early interests. My dad got his master's. He wrote his master's thesis on Robert Frost and the Civil War, and his favorite American writer was Robert Frost, but he's also fascinated with the Civil War. And he talked about what Frost wrote about after the Civil War, and then the growing Chicagoland, with people coming in, soldiers from the war, settling there, and immigrants settling there. But I went on from there. I got really interested in the ancients. I loved Pindar, 500 years before the life of Christ, and his books. I remember the first book of Pindar that I wrote, the Pythian, talked about the long road is high for us to travel, and time closes, and blah blah blah, and then from there, I got fascinated with the old Romans, Marcus Aurelius and Tacitus and some of them guys, and then but my modern poets, who I really loved, most of all, W.H. Auden, which is a famous English poet in the early 20th century, and also Wilfred Owen. Wilfred Owen was a young Englishman who was a fabulous poet, and he wrote a lot about war. He was caught up in World War I, and one of his most famous poems he wrote shortly before he died. He was Armistice Day was November 11 of 1918. He was shot a couple of days through the head by a German sniper a couple of days before the armistice. But in the meantime, he'd published these great poems. My favorite was he wrote in Latin and English, Dulce decorum est pro patria more, which means sweet and honorable it is to die for one's country. And it was an ironic poet because he showed how unsweet it is as a soldier to die for your country. I mean, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, as bitter as the cut of innocent sores on tongues, etc. But that sort of thing, and you start to visualize what it was like to be in war. And if you haven't read Wilfred Owen, you got to do it because it's fabulous. But in any event, so in terms of the use of poetry and the writing of poetry and how prolific it is, why do you think that the United States of America, a great country, among other great countries, is poetry is not emphasized as much here. Let's face it, we live in a microcosm. You know, the West Coast and the East Coast, poetry is a big deal, but the rest of the country, people don't spend as much time with poetry as we do out here and on the East Coast. And yet in other countries, we know Russia, we know Germany, France, Italy, Spain, you know, all the European countries, Britain, poetry has really got a special status. And I know why I think it's not that way in America, although it's much better than it was when I was a kid. Many more people reading poetry and writing poetry and really great poetry. But why do you think that this has happened in America, even though it's improving?
That's a good question. I've been taking the first one. Do you want to?
Yeah. I'm not too sure. You know, I'm not entirely sure. I will say that poetry continues to be an art that, you know, a literary art that involves a lot of patience, a lot of solitude, a lot of quiet. And I do think that as we are right in the middle of 2025, everything is digital and fast paced. And so for poetry to really be enjoyed, I mean, I think even like on a solitary basis, one needs to really say it out loud, to read it out loud. Either in a theater like ours or even just in the comfort of one's home. So I mean, I suspect that maybe our digital age has something to do with it, especially here in America. But I'm not entirely sure. But I will say that you know, having a space like Beyond Baroque, it never really feels. It always feels alive because we're here on a weekly basis. Hosting poets, speaking poetry. That's kind of like our little world here is all about poetry and about art. So here in Beyond Baroque, it's definitely alive. I feel that it's alive here in Los Angeles as well.
Absolutely.
But you know, and I hope that we can continue to make it more alive in other places of the world. And you know, there definitely should be a Beyond Baroque in every corner, really.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think about LA, the cosmopolitan area of LA, 15 million people, and you know, and we got beaucoup really fine poets here. In fact, I'd love to name all of them, but if I forgot somebody's name, they'd be mad at me. So let's just say we got a lot of great poets in the LA basin, and a lot of up and coming poets. And yeah, it's interesting, but I got my opinion as to why we're behind too. But go ahead, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it is an excellent question, and it's not an easy one to answer. I think just I agree with most everything that Jimmy said. I think additionally, the United States is historically and still to this day probably the most capitalist nation on earth. Certainly in its most extreme forms here in many ways. And that lends itself to a certain kind of sort of utilitarian view of education. Where you're sort of, you go to school to learn, how to succeed in the professional world and business. Whereas I think a lot of other countries are invested in various ways for various reasons. I don't think it's like a uniform thing in protecting in some cases or promoting or encouraging the cultural life. Because poetry isn't really it's not a financially lucrative art form. I mean, really, most art forms are not lucrative, other than things like mass television or whatever. But so there's not as much investment in making poetry as part of the education. It's not, or in sort of the general cultural life. There's not as much state support for art spaces, for poets, for writers, and that's not always. I mean, it is. In many ways, a terrible thing. There is certain things that come along with that. I do find that here in the United States, certainly talking to colleagues around the world, there's a lot more freedom here, partially because people ignore you to make your art. Whereas in many countries, there's such a heavy state apparatus involved in who gets funded, and that it makes everybody's lives easier in terms of having more support for what they do. But there's sort of less space to experiment and try things out, and that's certainly something you see at a place like Beyond Baroque, where people are kind of building their own communities, because there is the lack of sort of cohesion or overarching sort of bureaucracy that you have in other countries.
Yeah, no, you both have made really excellent points, I think, and I lay it to the educational system in America, which goes back to what both of you talked about. I think because I've been exposed to the educational system in other countries big time, and it's interesting, the spoken and the written word have taken a beating in a lot of ways in society, especially since the computer age. I mean, I remember being in my building one day, and it was early morning, and there was another guy in another apartment, and he was going out the hallway. I hadn't met him yet. He was a new person in the building. I said, "Hi, how you doing?" He said, "Sup." I said, "What the hell does that mean, sup? S-U-P?" I was thinking about it all day. I said, "What's sup?" So I asked a couple of buddies. They said it's slang for another slang word, "What's up?" And instead of "Hey, good morning, how are you?" now it's "What's up?" And now it's even truncated to sup. And so it was all about the truncating of the English language. And I'm saying we need to go the other way. We need to go the other way. But I do lay a lot of it to the educational system. And I'm a former educator, and I've also taught things that aren't in the university. I've taught flying, and I've also taught sailing. And it's interesting when you get talking with people and you hear the way they use our American language, and you understand that it is fairly limited until you get into a poetic circle, of course. But out there in the world, our language, it seems to be limited in a lot of ways. And I lay that on the American educational system, as well as the commercial emphasis that go out and get a great job and forget about how to talk, learn how to say sup. So okay, well, great. But in any event, again, what I really love about the poetry community is the use of language and the expansion of the language, and which is really a big deal. So in any event, moving on. So we've got things going on here at Beyond Baroque. We got the Linda J. Albertano Foundation, which young lady poets are eligible to apply for, and each year we give out an award. But I know there's something else that you folks, that you guys do too, and I just can't remember the name of there's another foundation that.
Sort of scholarship, fellowship opportunity. We do have the Amanda Gorman Future Voices Poetry Prize as well.
I'm sorry, what was her name?
The Amanda Gorman Future Voices Poetry Prize. So Amanda Gorman was the U.S. inaugural poet at President Biden's inauguration in 2021, and she's also the former National Youth Poet Laureate and the former LA Youth Poet Laureate, and she started off here at Beyond Baroque. She was taking workshops actually here when I first arrived to work, over a decade ago, and so she since became, probably the most famous poet in the United States at this point. Millions and millions of people watched her read her poem in 2021, and she's gone on to do many other high-profile things. And so, in honor of her and the sort of inspiration that she provided to a really large swath of people across the country, we started a youth poetry prize.
A youth poetry prize under her name, or
under her name, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And so we launched that in 2022, I believe.
2022.
Yeah, 2021, 2022.
And we started Linda's in 23.
It was launched in 2024 actually, last year.
Oh, is that right?
Year,
24.
Yeah,
you're right. 24.
Because we talked about it for a while, and then it actually officially gets going. 2024 was
We had to write out that long, wordy one-page contract.
Right. That's right. That's right.
So that's really interesting, and I remember at that big dinner festival we had in the fall, and there were a lot of people there who you were acknowledging, and great. And Beyond Baroque has their eye open for poets who are doing things well and really contributing to the poetry world, and they'd like to acknowledge them. which is a great thing that they do. This is why Beyond Baroque has become so famous. It's really the place to be if you're a poet. So anyway, so Jimmy, did you want to say something?
Well, just that we're going to continue, I think, doing the good work that we have been doing for really a long time. I mean, we've, as you've mentioned at the top, we've been around since 1968, but really, I'd say in the last 5 years, we've really flourished under Quentin's leadership, and want to continue doing that work. So that we can stay here for another. We're celebrating 57 years this year, so we want to stay available to the public for another 57 and even beyond that. So we're really looking forward to continuing the work and continuing to make this a home for all poets in Los Angeles and everywhere.
Well, let me clue you in on something. You guys know that I communicate with my wonderful wife on a daily basis, so she knows what I'm doing all the time. She's also got her eye on you guys. Frank, make sure those guys do it right. Just teasing. Take a look up there in the camera, Jimmy, so they all see what you look like. The new boss and the what do we call it? The evolved boss.
Superannuated boss.
Anyway, anybody out there got any questions? No? I don't see any hands coming up. Okay. So it's been a pleasure to talk to these guys. It's been a pleasure to make this presentation for you folks out there. I need another swig of water.
You want to show the 4 books?
Alex, our techie, just mentioned the books on Linda J. On the life of Linda J. Albertano. Can you see it? This is one. All of these books contain her poetry and some of mine. This one is, it all began with cherry soup. The night that we met, she took me to a little bar where they served cherry soup. Well, I knew about cherry soup because I lived in Denmark for a while in between school and Europe. And it's a delicacy there, and these guys, the chefs at this place, knew about cherry soup, and that was the only place in LA that made cherry soup. But that cherry soup is, we talked for an hour, and the next day I went and got her, and we went for a picnic and stayed together for 55 years, was still together, 58 years. So this one is called Two Souls Desperate to Connect, and it's actually about my studies and my learning how to communicate with her after she's passed away, and some of you may not believe in that, but there are a lot of people who do, and I've learned how to do it, and actually I'm helping other people learn how to do it through this book, Two Souls Desperate to Connect. And then the other book is Poetry Diva. Poetry Diva, this book, these books, by the way, are all available here at Beyond Baroque. They have a full library of books to sell, poetry books here, and available to you. You can come in and browse. It's a great place to come and visit. What I was going to say is, you guys, for the public, it's basically hours on Thursday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Is that fair to say, or is it Wednesday as well?
So the bookstore is open on Fridays and Saturdays, 12 to 6, and then when we have programs, which frequently, we have programs frequently on Thursday, sometimes on Sundays, definitely always on Friday and Saturdays. And so you can also, we have an art gallery as well, that's by appointment Wednesday and Thursday, and then open Friday, Saturdays. And so, the hours vary a little bit, but typically we're here, Fridays and Saturdays, open to the public. We're here a lot more than that working. Yeah.
Right. And also, I just want to mention, by the way, peripherally, there's another place here in Venice that has Linda's books. It's called the Small World Bookshop. Been there for a long, long time. A lovely lady, Mary, runs the place, and she has the books available too. Just to be fair and let everybody know, it's a good place. And Mary's actually been over here for poetry. Yeah. So anyway, anything else that we need to tell these folks out there just dying to learn everything about Beyond Baroque?
Come visit us, 681 Venice Boulevard, Venice, California.
There we go. Okay, anything else?
I think that's it. Thanks for having us, Frank.
Okay,
thanks,
my
Frank.
pleasure. All right, folks, there you go. We'll see you at Beyond Baroque. Take care.